TIFU by brushing cat hair off of a lady at church. This happened when I was 15. And I'm 26 now. But I will remember this until the day I die. It's hands down my biggest foot-in-mouth moment so far. It was a brisk October evening. And my church was having a potluck. My father was the minister. So attendance was mandatory at all the functions. I generally looked forward to these events because I love talking to the elderly. They always have good stories and life advice. Ya know? Well, Mrs. L was not exception. I was sitting with her and her husband, and she struck up a conversation with me about how they'd just gotten a cat. She was telling me how beautiful he was and showing me some pictures of him. And just going on and on about her new little gray cat. Now by this point I'm sure some of you can guess where this is going. Mrs. L had been battling cancer for years off and on. She would go into remission. Then it would come back. I'm not quite sure what type of cancer she had. But she had been in remission at this point for a while. Long enough that all of her hair had come back from chemo. And was beautifully styled. Eventually, it came time to go. And we all stood up. Mrs. L was wearing a beautiful shawl on top of a black outfit. When she took her shawl off and turned around, I noticed that her back was covered in cat hair. I asked her to wait one moment and started brushing the hair off her back. She asked what I was doing with a sort of worried tone. When I replied, I said, "Mrs. L, it looks like you sat on your sofa, and now you're covered in cat hair." She immediately busted out in sobs. Her husband came running over and asked what was wrong. She was inconsolable. Turns out she was no longer in remission. She had recently started a new round of chemo to treat the even more aggressive kind of cancer she had developed. The cat hair I was brushing off of her was actually her hair that had started falling out again. In clumps. She hadn't told anyone at church yet. Besides my father and a couple of the other men in leadership roles. To say I felt bad is an understatement. She got incredibly sick after that night and I only saw her a few more times before she eventually lost her battle with cancer. I apologized, but it still will haunt me until my final breath. TLDR. Brushed cat hair off a lady at church only to find out it was her hair falling out after chemo. This is such an innocent yet horrific situation to have been in. This would keep me up at night for the rest of my life. You had no ill intention. You don't need to blame yourself. I am sure you brought that sweet lady more joys than sorrows. May she rest in peace. Now by this point I'm sure some of you can guess where this is going. I did not guess where that was going. Crying. Going through chemotherapy, knowing you have a terminal disease. It's rough. You put on a pretty face and try to live like everything is fine. Until it's not fine. Until you see your body transform into something you don't recognize anymore. This was her crack in the facade. You didn't cause this. You just accidentally noticed the crack. Don't worry yourself about it. She knows you didn't mean any harm by it. It's just so damn hard to keep it all together all the time that when someone does notice a crack, it makes it real. Don't let it haunt you. The human experience is such a fickle thing. Guaranteed I'd be on my deathbed chuckling with my husband over how I scared a kid from church when I had an outburst.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.